Hello, Jennifer Volbrecht here. I'm here with another book review. Today I'll be talking about Educated by Tara Westover. That's what it looks like. Educated is a memoir. It's told in the first person by the author, and it's about her childhood and growing up within some religious and cultural boundaries or conditions. So it's a story of her circumstance. And what I really enjoyed about the story is that it's told from the first person, but she also acknowledges that some of her stories are traumatic and dramatic, and there's a lot of different elements in it. And so she brings in some other elements of storytelling where she says, okay, this is how I remember this scenario going down, but I also want to honor and acknowledge this is how my brother experienced it in his words. And so she would interview her brother and say, hey, that day, what do you remember? And so she brings in some multiple points of view. And I guess the magic is that she doesn't change her own point of view. She says, this is still how I remember it, but I'm also going to include in my story is that this is how my brother remembers it. They're different. I can't explain why we experience this differently, but it is what it is. And that rings true to me. Sometimes I'm sitting around the living room with my siblings, and we remember things from our childhood, and we remember things quite differently. My sister has a very vivid memory of September 11th, and specifically September 12th and 13th is when we were out on the street corners waving American flags and being very patriotic. And I have no recollection of that at all, of doing that as a family, but she remembers it very vividly. And so that's just an example of, how people remember things differently, and it all comes together into a cohesive story. So this book, Educated, I thought did that quite well. And the other piece of information that's just so, I don't know, shocking or interesting is that the author, Tara, she was born in the 1980s, in mid 1980s. She's my age. And that her experiences in this story are like modern day time. This isn't a story from the 1950s where, that was the cultural norm. And so I think for me, reading it is especially shocking. And also, I'm able to kind of relate in my childhood in particular, because we had a lot of, I grew up in a religious childhood. And so sometimes I look back at our circumstances and I just kind of laugh, like, oh, wow, we were put in that situation because of our religion, or because of the way that our parents, their cultural constraints. And so thinking about it in terms of the period that it was modern day. She's going to a modern day university and learning from these experiences and telling her story. So it's a book that I highly recommend. It's very relatable in a lot of ways. And I think it's also just a really great expression of storytelling. Thanks.